We don't have a TV in our living room. Now, don't get me wrong, we have a massive projector and watch plenty of shows down in the basement, but in our living room, we wanted to keep things a little more subtle. But we love listening to music, especially when we're entertaining, so we have a music station set up over here. And we had these set up with a pair of bookshelf speakers from Fluence that also went with the Fluence turntable that we have, but recently they stopped working. So after those started having some power issues, I started looking for an upgrade that would add some more functionality. See, the Fluences were nice because they had Bluetooth and they had a line in, so I could plug in the turntable to them. But in a world of AirPlay, Bluetooth just doesn't really cut it, especially in a living room when I'm, moving back and forth between different rooms, going to get drinks if we're entertaining people. So having AirPlay on here was something I was really looking for. And I've used Edifier speakers in the past. We still have an MS-50 in our kitchen that we use almost daily. So I quickly landed on these, the S1000W from Edifier. So let's dive in and take a look at what these speakers can do. Here are some of the quick specs. They do come in at $600 for the pair. Of course, they have Wi-Fi, so they have AirPlay 2, high-res audio up to 24-bit, 192 kilohertz, and they have 120 watts of power. First off, let's take a look at the design. Now, I kind of think they sit in the middle of something that looks a little more modern and something more classic. I think the wood finish on here kind of pushes it more in the classic design, whereas the kind of see-through hybrid mesh cover over the drivers here make it look a little more modern. And this black finish that's behind the speaker cover actually has a little bit of a leather kind of look and feel to it. So it kind of sits right in between, and it works really well in our living room here, which is a little bit more eclectic, not necessarily a totally minimalist modern design. Personally, I would love the option to have a more opaque cover here, something that hides the drivers a little bit more, as I don't really think there's anything really special here that you need to see them for. So I would like to cover that up, give it a little bit more of a classic design, but all in all, I like the look of these a lot better than the Fluence. And that's the same thing that my wife said when I put these up here. She thought they looked much nicer than what we had before. So now let's move on to the back of the speaker and talk about inputs, which was really what drew me to this speaker in the first place. I wanted it to be an easy to use all-in-one option for multiple formats. There are 2 line inputs, optical, coax, Bluetooth, and of course Wi-Fi. And that combination of inputs is exactly what I was looking for. There are Saturday mornings where I just want to put on some jazz vinyl and sip a coffee and just kind of relax, but then there are also times when my kids are requesting the latest K-pop Demon Hunter soundtrack, and so I want to just pull something up on my phone really quick and be able to put it on here, and also be able to move around the house and not feel like I'm going to lose some sort of Bluetooth connection to these speakers. So that's what's really nice with the AirPlay functionality. But none of that matters if they don't sound good, right? Well, with a 5.5-inch driver handling the lows and mids and a 1-inch titanium driver for treble, they do sound pretty great. Frequency response is rated from 40 to 40,000 kilohertz, which won't deliver earth-shaking lows like a dedicated subwoofer, but for my listening, it's plenty of range. Now, typically speakers and headphones top out around 20 kilohertz, so the extra headroom in this going up to 40 kilohertz is what gives it that high-res audio certification. And 120 watts is plenty of power. These get plenty loud, especially, just in a living room here. It's not like we're trying to put on full-blown concerts. This 120 watts is quite a bit for some bookshelf speakers like this. And another benefit of these speakers is that since they are high-res certified, you can stream from apps like Tidal with full 24-bit, 192 kilohertz quality. Additionally, there are boost and cut knobs in the back for bass and treble, and they're labeled as going from minus to +6. These can help dial in the sound, but my favorite way to listen to these was having treble right in the middle. If you go way too high on the treble, it does get pretty harsh. And then with bass, I would just pull it back a little bit, cut a little bit from that, as I find that this has a kind of darker tone overall. Unless my kids are wanting a dance party, then we crank up the bass. All right, so let's talk about the low end. Reaching down to 45 hertz, the low end on these speakers is full, but never overbearing. I found the overall tone of the speakers to be a bit on the darker side, boosted for low end performance. That being said, if you are a full-blown bass head and that is your #1 priority, you want deep, heavy-hitting lows, these still might not be enough for you. You might need a subwoofer. Personally, I enjoyed the bass boost for casual listening. It kind of fits the vibe in this room a little bit better. For mids, I usually like to listen to metal, something with a very intricate, detailed guitar track. How easily can I pick out what's going on, distinguish between the different parts when there are multiple, somewhat chaotic guitar lines happening? So I listened to Mist by Protest the Hero, and on this one in particular, I found the sound on the darker side and a bit muddy in the mids. The lower mids are pushed further forward than I typically prefer, and this can be overbearing for the highs. It seems like it missed a little bit of the dazzle in the drums and vocals that I usually look for here. And I also missed a little bit of that detail in the guitars that I usually enjoy listening to when I'm on a pair of high fidelity headphones. That being said, vocals on tracks like Love is a Beautiful Thing by Vulfpeck are thick and lush. That low mid boost added some great presence to Monica Martin's voice and was a pleasure to listen to. Not to mention that extra boost to the low end made Joe Dart's bass sound extra thumpy and well-rounded. And while busy tracks like Mist lost some of the high-end dazzle due to the low mids, highs shine brightly on tracks like Our Day Will Come from Amy Winehouse. Horns, cymbals, and hi-hats all came through crisp and clear. And when I am just sipping a coffee on a Saturday morning listening to some jazz, I really enjoy the sound coming out of here. It does sound nice and full because of that boost in the low and low mids. So putting it all together, I really do think that these speakers are the perfect fit for what I'm looking to do here in my living room and for the type of listening that we do. Being able to listen to vinyl, but then also being able to quickly transition over and listen to AirPlay and just pull up anything from Spotify fits our family's needs really well. Unfortunately, no one in my family enjoys busy metal tracks, which is the only genre I found lacking on those speakers. So when I am listening to that kind of music, I'll probably go out and listen in my office and use a nice pair of headphones I usually use. But for jazz, pop, indie rock, everything that usually fills these speakers, these are just perfect for what I'm trying to do in here. And the combination of inputs for my turntable and effortless AirPlay streaming makes them exactly what I was looking for. So coming in at $600, it is an investment. Obviously, Sonos has some very similar functionality. For me, these are basically hitting exactly what I was looking for.